Thank you for inviting me. During a symposium on topography and toponymy, one optimistically may expect to be informed about identifications or to get an idea of the landscape. But for a symposium on topography and toponymy in Greater Mesopotamia, however, that is aiming too high, as we have experienced during the last 2 days. The nature of the cuneiform evidence, abundant as it is, enhances speculation. The huge geographical and chronological range of the area entails that place and canal names change and that different settlements may carry one and the same name. Besides, the geographical characteristics of the region, such as sedimentation in the alluvial plain, have distorted the results of archaeological surveys. On the other hand, the prospects for Nippur are promising. The Old Babylonian layers have yielded hundreds of contracts in which houses and fields are sold, inherited, bequeathed, and exchanged. The description of these fields in the contracts mentions the surface, the type of field, the type of field, the area, the irrigation district in which it is located, and the owners of the neighboring fields or the canals or rivers. In Nippur, most often only 1 or 2 neighbors are mentioned. For Sippar, for example, this often amounts to 4. Besides, the scribes from the 2nd millennium BC have been relatively prolific in their descriptions of their religious capital, as they were in the 1st millennium about Babylon, for example, with the Tintir list. We have the famous city map, which can be related to the archaeological excavations of the sites. The canal in the middle of the city can be recognized. The Ekur temple, the main temple, has been excavated and is located on the Kassite map. The old beds of the Euphrates can be recognized, and the Chicago excavation house is located in the ancient city park. Also from the Kassite periods is this wonderful map of fields, which is more relevant to my discussion of the fields in Nippur of today. Unfortunately, it contains only Kassite place names. Moreover, the map is made on a relatively large scale and represents therefore only a small part of the agricultural hinterland of Nippur. The field located in the river bend measures 63 hectares only. Therefore, this map is interesting only because it gives us an idea about the layouts of irrigation districts and canals, and of the canals providing for them. The main canals are identified by Iets Narum. The smaller irrigation canals are identified as Namkar, and then their name, and the smallest canals are Atapum. And in between are fields and hamlets. This ancient map, actually the idea it gives corresponds to the study that Tanre has made about Namkarum canals in the Sippar region. And an ancient map and an area for a satellite picture of the region show that the Namkarum canals are located one next to the other. The irrigation districts must be between these canals, and sometimes the canals may have different debouchment, points of departure, so to say, the older ones being located downstream from the newer ones and being abandoned for newer debouchments located a little bit higher. Furthermore, the scribes of Nippur have immortalized their city in parts of lexical lists. The Old Babylonian forerunner of the list formerly known as Garagubulu, now referred to as Ura, was composed in the scribal schools of Nippur. Its fifth section, listing geographical names, opens with 160 entries enumerating names of fields, or rather irrigation districts, areas watered by a specific canal branch. This lexical text is preserved in more than 50 copies, and many of the field names mentioned are known from the title deeds in the Old Babylonian private archives from Nippur, and that is where it becomes interesting. The different issues that can be addressed are, how can we identify, see what can we do with the districts that occur in the URA list and that do not occur in the contracts. There are also irrigation districts in the legal documents that do not figure in the URA list. And these two aspects can give us ideas about the factors playing a role in the composition of lexical lists, although of course it remains a question of the accident of discovery, especially with the contracts. We do not know about all the districts. And then finally we can try to figure out how these irrigation districts must have looked like. Can we draw a map? Can we identify different fields in one irrigation district on the basis of these legal documents, identifying the neighbors with each other, and so on? The first issue, or the first two issues, what are the relationships between the documents listed in the URA list on the one hand, and the documents in the irrigation districts in the legal documents? This is a section of the URA list, the beginning, and here we see which of these irrigation districts occur in legal documents. So quite a lot of them. Here we see that Asher Iginima, the northern fields, is specified as Iginima Anta and Iginima Kita, the upper and the lower field. This is done for one other irrigation district, which is documented in the legal documents as well. So we don't have an upper northern field in the legal documents. Of course, it may be the accident of discovery, but also a factor playing a role in the composition of these lexical lists is the attempt of the scribes to be complete, which they do quite fanatically. This, for example, is a section of the URA list which is descriptive rather than which gives a description of the fields rather than real irrigation districts. Barren field, uncultivated field, the type in which it is fertilized. So the lexicographical lists are not only enumerations of the surroundings, but also enumerations of fields, of types of fields. Although, it's not listed here because it occurs in another part, and it makes no sense to present 160 entries which you cannot read. There is a field in the URA list, Asha Apin Nuzu, field which is not known a plow. And this occurs as an irrigation district, which is strange. But these do not occur, and it's not a coincidence. Also here is an enumeration of irrigation districts identified by the amount of seen and of different different types of dogs. Here we know this system very well from other lexical lists. It's a scribe who is trying to be complete, to list all the possibilities. In the legal documents, two types of irrigation districts occur with do 6 mounds, the mount of Sien and the mount of An, which, strangely enough, does not occur in this very long list. Also, Kausa, the Kausa messenger, 3 types, the Kausa messenger, the Kausa messenger of Enki and of Ninurta. In the legal documents, we have Kausa messenger of Ninurta and of Nusku, which is not listed in URA. So they do what they want. Also strange is that the Kausa irrigation district is mentioned twice in the URA list. At the end of the list of irrigation districts, in the list with the different Kausas, and also here probably on the basis with associations with the sign Ka. It reoccurs. So the logic, we can find logic in these lexical lists, but it's not systematic, not at all actually. So what we can try next is look at one of these numerous irrigation districts that has quite some attestations and try to find out if we can identify the fields and locate the fields. If we have 10 attestations, we might give it a try. However, these are the 10 attestations of the Esir Duba district, the irrigation district of the squeaky sandals. You see the dates listed here, the size of the fields. The irrigation district contains fields as well as gardens. Gardens planted with trees. If we look at these attestations, for example, the fields are one small field, 35 sar only, and one field which is a little bit larger. And they are bought by, this one is bought by Idin Enlil and his brother Imhua. And here the same Imhua, son of Taum, we know that the other one is, that these two brothers are the sons of Taum, exchanges a field probably located next. He exchanges a field which he has bought earlier. So, and it is located. This field is located next to Idin Enlil's own fields. So probably we're talking about one and the same fields here. These are these persons in a family tree, a very large family tree or a very complicated one, where actually in the end this family, these sons actually, these are the same. They inherit the whole lot, what these different branches have assembled. Fields, houses, slaves, everything. And the field described here is actually, probably, the same one which is given, and this is a section of a field where of a contract where Naruptum marries Damik Ilishu. And let's get back to the family tree. Naruptum and Damik Ilishu here. Damik Ilishu is the grandson of Ubarum. Naruptum is the granddaughter of Idin Enlil and Inhua. So they marry, and Naruptum gets a very large dowry with several fields. And one of the fields is located next to the field of Inhua, and thus is the same field as, or is part of these small fields. Together they form this larger field, and some more which is not attested. Here as well, this is documents where Ali Agati and Mihir Eendil marry. And Ali Agati also gets a large dowry. Somewhat smaller, but dowries normally do not comprise real estate, so this is exceptional anyway. But these two fields probably are the same ones as the ones bought in the older documents. And we can identify the participants here. So actually until now we have discussed 4 documents concerning fields in the irrigation district of the Squeaky Sandals, but actually it's the one and the same fields. And we continue along the same lines. A garden, 2 parts, small parts of a garden, are bought by 2 different persons, but they are by Imhutum Sinidinam, buys a piece here, and a very long, more than 40 years later, a field next to the a garden next to the garden of Imhutum is sold. Moreover, Imhutum buys this field from his brother. So this is one and the same garden which is enlarged by the new owner, maybe after it has been divided through an inheritance or something. So again, only one field is documented here. Another example, in one and the same year, 3 documents concerning gardens in the district of the Squeaky Sandals. All bought by Ilisukal Inyatum, and the surfaces are very small. Unfortunately, here the neighbor is not preserved, and here the neighbor is unknown. This neighbor, Ilisukal Inyatum, is of course our buyer, so the fields which is here neighboring this, the garden neighboring this garden is one of these gardens, most probably. And the seller, Ubarum, son of Ili Uru, and Shu Ilishu, son of Nergal Uru, here Ubarum, son of Nergal Uru. Probably this is a mistake, or this is one and the same person at least. Nergal Uru and Ili Uru. And strangely enough, the field is not actually bought, the fields are redeemed. So previously they must have been in the hands of probably of Eneatum, since Ilisukal redeems the gardens of the house of his father. So again, we are talking about one single garden, which is located, which has been divided in tiny plots and which is being reunited here. So actually, our 10 attestations may be reduced to 3 or 4 fields only. This is one and the same field, which was bought by Imgua and Idin Enlil. These 2 fields belong together because they are part of these dowries. These 2 gardens were bought by Imhutum, form part. First bought by Imhutum and later bought by Ilisukal. And these 3 fields have been redeemed. And the last field here cannot be identified further. So the red and blue ones are actually one single field. The green ones are one single field garden, and the yellow ones are also one single garden. So my initial question, trying to reconstruct what an irrigation district on the basis of these fascinating documents, appears to be impossible, because this is just an example. I can give you another example which is specific in a different way. So it won't work. On the other hand, what does work is that we can get an idea of what happens with these fields, and how the estate is being transferred over different generations through the family property, and how important it appears to be to keep these fields in the hands of a single family. And also in these inheritance documents, one also sees that when the possessions of a single family are enumerated, preferentially, like the long list, the dowry lists, preferentially these fields are located in different irrigation districts in order to spread the risk of bad harvests. So even though these chains of transmission show from time to time that a person tries to accumulate neighboring fields or neighboring gardens in order to enlarge his fields, in the meantime, a landowner will not concentrate on one single irrigation district. This is illustrated with this text as well, a list here. The possessions of a father are divided between his son and his daughter, who is a priestess. And the section, what is the share of his daughter is described here. She gets furniture, and she gets 3 pieces of real estate, a house, a field, and a garden. And I will talk about this garden. Here it is 75 sar. In the irrigation districts, the northern irrigation districts, it may be more, it may be less, more or less. Here we see how this field is described in documents recorded later. the first document on the previous slide dates to Rimsin 4. 40 years later, more or less, the same field is described, the same garden, but it is a little bit smaller. It's 70, so it's next, and he was talking about it already. And then, still, 30 years later, this very same garden is being divided between 2 heirs, and now it amounts to 80 sar. So it's bigger again. So when we cannot reconstruct a map of these irrigation districts, what we do find out is how it works and what they do with it, which I think is a very good alternative. So these are the people who have owned this field in the course of these 70 years and who have passed it on. And in the end it's divided between these 2 persons. So thank you for your attention.